Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming. Our first speaker of the day is Mustafa Zafari, an architect and urbanist specialized in cultural and economic diplomacy, international relations, and business development. He was born in Iran and has studied in the American University of Beirut and did his master's degree here in the Polytechnic University of Barcelona. He is the founder and CEO of the Center of Contemporary Urbanity in Tehran, and is here to talk to us about Shia identity in Iran, historical roots, and their impact on everyday life. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks very much for everyone for coming to this session. I would like to thank the Pompeu Fabra University and Professor Rosa and Professor Tony for this very kind invitation. And I would like to take a few seconds for all of us, because Professor Tony's father is a little bit ill. So I wish we take a few seconds to pray for him and wish him all the best. Forza Tony. No? Thank you. I would like to speak to you about Shia identity of Iran, historical roots, and their impact on everyday life. I would like to start this presentation with this map. This is a map of Islamic countries in the world, or the countries in which the majority of the populations are Muslims. As you see, it starts from the west, from West Africa to almost East Asia. And the ones that you see in color green, Muslims in general, are divided into two sects, the Shias and the Sunnis. Now, what the world knows is mostly about Sunnis, because Sunnis are the majority in the Islamic world. If you see on this map, the ones that the color green shows the countries in which the majority are Sunnis, and the ones in color purple are countries in which the majority is of Shias. From what we see is that obviously the majority of Sunnis, but when we go to the Middle East, things become a little bit different. And if we take the Middle East, or if we exclude Egypt from it and just the Middle East region, Shias have a little bit, a slight majority in the Middle East region. So today I want to talk to you about what is this pink color doing in the middle of all of this green. Something is fundamentally different about this purple color. At times, it might feel that these are two different religions, although they have the same roots, but it seems that at times there are two different religions, and I think the world knows very less about the Shia part of Islam, and this presentation is to introduce this part to you, but also to tell you that Iran, as being the only country in the world who has a huge majority of Shia population, over 90%, how does this Shia identity affect Iran, and how does it affect its everyday life, and it's the role it plays in the region. But I would like to, again, it's not an exact map, as we know with the maps. You see this area, all you see in color red are Sunni countries, and Shias are concentrated in Iran, in parts of Iraq, in Lebanon, and a bit in Syria, and down there in Yemen. Well, of course, in Afghanistan and Pakistan and India, we have a little bit of them. But as you see, it's a sea of Sunni Islam, and in the middle of it, especially in Iran, which is the stronghold, there is this difference, which in the beginning, in the Islamic world, it was a little bit of inconvenience. Iranians or Shias were a minority that caused a bit of inconvenience. But as the time grows and the influence of Iran in the region grows, this inconvenience has turned into a kind of threat, as they would see it. Again, I would like to mention that the two strongholds of Shia and Sunni Islam in the Middle East are Iran and Saudi Arabia, Iran being the main supporter and sponsor of Shiism, and Saudi Arabia being the main sponsor and supporter of Sunni Islam. The ones that you see in color yellow in the middle are in the middle of Saudi Arabia, in which the Salafid or Wahhabid, an extreme version of Sunni Islam, was rooted. So let's start with the literal meaning of the word. Now, Sunni, which they constitute about 80 to 85% of all Muslims, the term Sunni literally means a person who pertains to a certain tradition or habit. But the complete name in Arabic is Ahl as-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah, which means people of tradition and majority. This is the complete name of Sunni Islam. The Shias, on the other hand, they constitute 15% or maximum 20%. We don't have an exact statistics, but this seems to be roughly the figure. And the term Shia simply means follower. And the term Shia has been used several times in the Quran. And in the Quran, usually people who follow a certain political cause or a certain school of thought, they are referred to as Shia. So these are people who are directed towards something, dedicated towards a certain cause. But the complete name of the sect, again, is not just Shia, is Shi'atu Ali, which means the followers of the party of Ali. So to understand Shia Islam, we have to inevitably understand who is Ali and what is his party about, and why is it so different from the rest of the Islamic countries. Now, central to Shia Islam is the notion of a sacred family, the Sagrada Familia. In that sense, Shia Islam, and as we proceed, you will see, in a lot of ways, has similar concepts to religions such as Christianity and Judaism. So in Christianity, as we have the Jesus and Saint Mary and Joseph and John the Baptist, in Shia Islam, this family is sacred. Muhammad as the prophet of Islam, Ali, his cousin, and about which we're going to talk about, Fatima, the only daughter of Muhammad. Muhammad did not have any other children except Fatima, who grew old and got married with Ali, and their two sons, Hassan and Hussein. So why is this family sacred? Why Shias consider this family sacred? In Islam, what is written in Quran is considered to be the direct words of God, and it's an indisputable fact in Islam. So whatever is written in Quran is an evidence, and it's final. There is a verse in Quran, and the verse was revealed to Muhammad at a certain point in which Muhammad goes to his daughter's house, Fatima, and tells her that I feel it's a little bit cold. Can you give me a blanket? And Fatima gives him a blanket. And Ali, the man of the family, comes and sees that Muhammad is sitting in a corner and he's a little bit shaking, and he says, why is the Prophet of God shaking? So I will go with you under the blanket. And like this, the entire family, all five of them, gather together, and the Prophet starts praying for his family. From what we know is that Muhammad was a man who had a lot of adventures in his life, a lot of wars, a lot of developments, a lot of journeys, but he remained very calm and stressless. This is what we read from books. The only weak point, something that made him very anxious, was his family. In a way that in a lot of historical books, we read that he hugs his grandsons, Hassan and Hussein, and cries for them. And whenever he sees people, he would tell them, please treat my family fairly afterwards me. This is something that he was so anxious about in many, many occasions. So at this time, when they're all under this blanket and the Prophet is praying, this verse comes down, which is a verse of Quran. It's section 33, verse number 33. And the verse says, Allah, which is God, has intended to only remove from you all impurities, people of Prophet's house, and to purify you with total and extensive purification. So this is a verse, and it's indisputable. Both Sunni and Shia, they agree that the verse only belongs to these five people. Shia view says that this family is sacred and infallible, meaning that they make no mistake and they are immune to any impurity. Sunni Islam, on the other hand, would say that this is a sign of respect to Muhammad's family, but does not imply holiness or sacredness. So we speak a little bit about who is Ali. So I would like to introduce him in a little bit of lengthy way and to divide his life into three sections. One is from his birth to the demise of Muhammad in 632. Ali is the only person in the world who was born inside of Kaaba. And there's a story which I would kind of skip it, but this is seen as an advantage in the Islamic world. He is Muhammad's cousin, and he was enormously devoted to him. When Ali was born, Ali was the youngest son in his very, very large family, and Ali's father, Abi Talib, ran into some financial difficulties at the time, so every member of the family, of the relatives, were taking some of his kids to raise them in order to help them, and Muhammad brought Ali to his house at the age of what we know is to be 3 or 4. So at a very, very young age, he was raised in Muhammad's house along with Muhammad's first wife, Khadija, and later on as Fatima was born. So in the very beginning, he was raised by Muhammad. He's the first male Muslim. When Muhammad declared his prophecy, he came back home and he told his wife Khadija and Ali that he's a prophet, and these were the two first people, Khadija, his wife, being the first female Muslim, and Ali being the first male Muslim. When Ali was about 25 or 26, he proposed to Fatima, Muhammad's daughter, and they got married. And they had 4 children, Hassan and Hussein, and 2 girls, Zainab and Kulsum. Now, Zainab, as we see in the foreword, she's going to play a very, very important role in the history of Islam, especially in the history of Shia Islam, an undisputable role. Now, Ali was known to be a very brave man, a commander of Muhammad's army in most of his wars. And I've written the wars. I will have the presentation would be ready for everyone. I can share it, and so you can go into details, the name of the wars, the Battle of Badr, Uhud, Trench, Battle of Khaybar, all of them have their details. So Ali was Muhammad's commander-in-chief of his army. And in many occasions, Muhammad sent Ali to many places in order to preach Islam, especially in Yemen, which to this date still remains Shia. And as we see today, there is this devastating war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and the thing goes back to 1,500 years ago, where Ali went to Yemen and he invited those people, Yemenis, to Islam on behalf of Muhammad. Whenever Muhammad was not in Medina, his capital, Ali ruled on his behalf, and from what we understand from the historical accounts is that Muhammad was training him from the very early age to replace him and to succeed him afterwards, paying special attention to him. Now, again, what we know about Ali is that he has this very uncompromising character. In a way that a lot of people get attracted to him, but a lot of people also start to hating him because of his very uncompromising character, someone who stays very true to his beliefs. So as a commander-in-chief of Muhammad's army, well, he led many victories, and all the tribes which were defeated by Muslims at the time and which later converted to Islam, they held a grudge towards Ali. So the tribal problems also came into it, and we have to say that even at the time of Muhammad, Ali had more enemies than friends within the Muslim community and within Arabia in general. Now, the other reason that people envied him, or at the time being did not like him very much, was the very special attention Muhammad was giving to him. Now, there are lots of verses in Quran. Again, I have written the name of verses, you can check it later, like the verse of night of sleep, the verse of perfection, the verse of leadership, the verse of warning, the verse of love of relatives. Once these verses were revealed to Muhammad, he was saying that this verse is about Ali or is about my family. And no other person in Islam there is no verse in Quran about any specific person except Muhammad and Prophet's family, not any other Muhammad's companion. The other thing is that after Quran, the most important source in Islamic teachings are Muhammad's saying, Muhammad words, which are known as hadith or hadith. And Muhammad has a lot of hadiths about Ali, and he does not have those ones about his other companions. Now I'm going to read a few of them so that you would get into how the relationship between these two persons works. There is this hadith of the city of knowledge in which Muhammad says that I'm the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. So whoever desires knowledge and wisdom must enter from its gate. Another hadith which is very important, especially Shias always refer to it, is a hadith in which Muhammad likens himself to Moses and Ali to Aaron, and it's called Hadith of Position. To me, Ali is like Aaron to Moses, except that there is no prophet after me. Hadith of righteousness is Ali is righteous, and righteousness is with Ali. And there is this hadith of flesh and blood in which it becomes very, very personal. And Muhammad looks at Ali and says, "Oh Ali, your children are my children, your flesh is my flesh, your blood is my blood, your war is my war, your peace is my peace. Faith has integrated into your flesh and blood the same way it has integrated to my flesh and blood. Whatever hurts you hurts me, and whatever pleases you pleases me. You are my brother and successor. Your followers will enter the heaven on beds of light." So no other of Muhammad's companion has such a privilege, and this created a lot of enmity and envy towards him. And by the way, these hadiths that I'm saying, this hadiths are valid, and both Shia and Sunni agree about this hadith and that it has been said about him. So towards the end of Muhammad's life, something very special happened, and that is that two months before Muhammad died, he went to Hajj, the large gathering of Muslims in the city of Mecca. It was the largest gathering because before that Muhammad said that he had sent messengers everywhere saying that he feels that his life is coming to an end and this is his last Hajj. So a large number of Muslims gathered. It was said about more than 50,000 at the time. On the way back, Muhammad receives this verse from Quran which says, "O messenger, proclaim the message which has been sent to you from Allah. If you don't, you have not fulfilled your prophecy." So this is a crucial moment, as if everything he has done in the past 23 years of his prophecy is going to depend on this special moment. So Muhammad asks everyone to gather in an area which is called the Pond of Khum. And he gives a very, very lengthy sermon. And he asks Ali to come next to him and raises his hand. And he says, "Whoever I am, his or her leader, then Ali is going to be his or her leader. O Lord, help whoever helps Ali and be enemy to whomever is enemy to Ali." And it took something between 3 to 7 days for all Muslims to come. The men were coming, shaking his hand and congratulating him to become the successor of Muhammad. And they brought a dish of water, and Ali put his hand, and they took it to the woman, and every woman put his hand in the dish as well. This is the way all men and women gave allegiance, and they would say something between 12,000 to 15,000 people at a time in those 3 to 7 days gave allegiance to him. So the Shia view is that Ali is the only rightful leader after Muhammad, and he's the first Imam. Or the Sunni view, later on, as it reveals, it says that this event does not imply that Ali is the leader of Muslim community after Muhammad. He's the leader of Muhammad's family. And it's also noteworthy to say that after this, again, Muhammad says that I have received another message from God, which is called the message of perfection. And it says that today I have perfected your religion for you and completed my blessings upon you and have become content that Islam to be your faith. And this was the last verse of Quran. Muhammad lived 2 months after this, and he never received any other verse after that, according to both Sunni and Shia accounts. But what happened after this was completely different. In Islam, it's very important that when someone dies, you have to bury him or her as soon as possible, preferably the same day. So Muhammad died in 632, and Ali, as being his successor and family, he was preparing him for his funeral, washing him, burying him. A group of Muslims, some of which were the leaders of important tribes and some were some important companions of Muhammad, they gathered in an area called Saqifa. Now, Saudi Arabia is an interesting place. When you go to Saudi Arabia, there isn't much of signs. Everything remains very simple and hidden. But if you go to city of Medina, there is this huge sign in red that says that this is the Saqifa because something important happened here. In that meeting, which took place in Saqifa, which people say between 20 and 50 people gathered, Muhammad's important companions, one of them being Abu Bakr, one of them being Umar bin Khattab, who's a very important person. He is the symbol of Sunni Islam. Sunnis hugely love this person, Umar bin Khattab, and they give him a lot of respect. On the contrary, Shias do not like him. And a number of other people, they gathered, and after discussions, they chose Abu Bakr to be the successor of Muhammad. So Umar bin Khattab, he also was a military commander. He took control of the streets of Medina. Abu Bakr moved to the mosque, and Umar bin Khattab asked people to go to mosque and give allegiance to Abu Bakr as the first caliph. Caliph meaning the successor of Muhammad. So Abu Bakr became the first caliph. This image is important, showing Abu Bakr in the mosque, Umar next to him, and people coming kissing his hand. And this, the reason they drew this picture, because Muhammad never allowed anyone to kiss his hand, and at this moment the leadership of Muslim community comes from a spiritual leadership to a very materialistic leadership. Now if we look at here, this is the city of Medina, Muhammad's capital today. This is the Mosque of Muhammad. Now you see there is nothing, because it's a desert city. There is no green space. The only green space is here, which is the place of Saqifa, is highly celebrated by Sunnis. So the Sunnis view that what happened in Saqifa it's a legitimate council, and Abu Bakr is the first caliph and everyone has to accept it. Shia view, on the other hand, says that this is a coup, and Ali was supposed to be the leader, and this is a coup, and the council is a conspiracy, it's unjust, and it's illegitimate. But the reason it's important here is not just a political conflict like any other political conflict in this history. Shias believe that it was God's word for Ali to succeed Muhammad. So something gravely dangerous, something gravely wrong happened. When Abu Bakr became the caliph, he did not just disobey the Prophet, he disobeyed the God. So from this moment, the fate of history changes. This is the Shia belief. So it's not like any other caliphate or empire or kingdom in which someone is supposed to be the king or caliph or leader and he doesn't become, and after a while people would say, okay, I'm sorry, let's forget it. It's not like that. This is something God has chosen him, and this is a leader chosen by God, and once you have betrayed it, the fate of history has changed. This is the Shia belief. That's why it's still so grave for them. Now what happens afterward is that obviously Ali did not accept Abu Bakr to become the caliph. He sat in his home, and a number of Muslims, 13 of them at the time, Salman the Persian, Ammar the Yasser, Abu Zar, Bilal the Ethiopian, these were important companions of Muhammad. They went into Fatima's house and they sat there and they said, we're not going to give allegiance to Abu Bakr. This is against God's will. So Abu Bakr and Omar, they asked Ali to exit. He would not accept. They attacked the house, according to the Shia accounts, and they burned the house. During this moving into the house, Fatima is caught between the door and the wall, and as she's pregnant, she miscarries her baby. And she feels ill, and Fatima dies about a few weeks later, almost 2 weeks later. Now, Sunnis believe that this event never happened and that the conflict between Ali and Abu Bakr was just verbal. On the other hand, Shias refer to some Sunni accounts, here including Hanbali, Abi Shiba, Ibn Qutayba, and Dahabi, in which Abu Bakr, at the end of his life, in his will, he says that one of the things he regrets is to forcefully enter Fatima's house. So Fatima dies because of her miscarriage 2 months later, and as a sign of disobeying the caliph, he asks Ali not to let Abu Bakr to pray on her. So this is important because now we're seeing the fate of Muhammad's family, as Muhammad was very, very anxious about his family. This is the first member of her family which dies after him, and she asks Ali to bury me at night, and no one should be there except close family and friends. These are modern paintings, Iranian modern paintings showing the loneliness of Ali after him, burying her wife. And there are poems. Ali has written lots of poems expressing her love for Fatima, and that after you, I'm not going to be able to enjoy anything in the life, and all of that. Sunnis believe that Fatima died in a natural way and out of grief for her father, but Shias believe that Fatima is a martyr, and her murderers, being Abu Bakr and Umar, they are criminals and should be held to account. And Fatima was too young, in her 20s, where she died, and this cannot be a natural death. Now, Abu Bakr ruled the Islamic countries, the Islamic Caliphate, for 2 years, from 632 to 34. After him, Umar bin Khattab, as I said, a very important person in Sunni Islam. He ruled for 10 years, and after him, Uthman bin Affan, another one of Muhammad's companions, ruled for 12 years. Now, this map that we see here, this shows the extent of Islamic territory at the time of Muhammad. When Muhammad died, the ones in orange were under Muslim rules. The three caliphs, Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, they largely expanded the Islamic territory. They had these wars conquering very, very important empires. The most important one being the Persian Empire, the Iranian Empire at the time. They conquered everywhere except the north. They conquered Mesopotamia, they conquered Jerusalem, and they conquered Egypt. And it was a huge achievement. And that is why one of the reasons that Sunni Muslims are so proud of these three people. These are the people who expanded the territory of Islam. So the main policies of these three people were military expansion of the Islamic territory, the development of infrastructure and bureaucratic system, but also systematic repressions of Ali's followers at the time. Ali's followers were their number was limited, but they were important people, and they were Muhammad's companions, some of whom, and they were repressed. For example, if we see this guy, Abu Zar, a very important person in Islam, Usman sent him to exile, and later on he died. It was a systematic oppression of them. So the social effect of the rule of the three caliphs is that one is the formation of elite class amongst Muslims. As Muslims conquered very rich lands, Iran, Mesopotamia, Jerusalem, Egypt, Muslims were people who lived in the desert, and there was nothing in Mecca and Medina. It was just desert. And they conquered huge civilizations. And the commanders of the army, in which at this time Ali did not participate in any of them, they became very rich. And this created this gap between rich and poor in the Islamic society. But another important issue in this point, in which it's very relevant to our time, because we are at the times in which Islamic extremism, Islamic fundamentalism, what we call Islamic terrorism, and this is all true and this all exists, the root goes back to this time, because a number of Muslims, especially those who participate in these wars, when they see, for example, let's see someone who has not seen anything but desert, now goes and conquers Mesopotamia and Jerusalem and Egypt and Iran, and he sees all of this grandeur. He feels contempt, and he would feel that he's lower than all of this. So he becomes angry, and this is why a lot of Muslims, and I would like to express that not a few of them, a lot of them, they believe that we don't need anything but Quran. So they burnt all libraries. This is a crime. They burnt the largest library in Iran, in the city of Jundi Shapur, and in the city of Tisfan. And they burnt the largest library in Jerusalem, and also in the city of Alexandria. It was systematic rape of women. It was systematic looting. And people were forcefully converted to Islam. And they were not the minority, they were the majority at the time. So Sunni view is that these three caliphs are rightful caliphs and a source of pride for Islam. And Shia believe that this is unjust because God said something and something else happened. This is unjust, illegitimate, and these are usurpers and war criminals. Finally, after Uthman, when Uthman passed away and Uthman was killed, the last caliph was killed because he gave too much power to his relatives, and there was a revolution at his time. And after the revolution, Ali was forced to accept the caliphate, although he was a bit reluctant to accept it, but finally he became caliph for a period of 4 years and 9 months. But before I get to that, I want to say what Ali did during this 24 years of the other three caliphates. He completely retired from all political affairs. So he never, ever did anything political except some counseling, especially on the issue of social justice. Now, from what we read in history, Ali is someone who is obsessed with justice. He's ready to do anything to create justice, and even sometimes something that at the time would be considered politically wrong or incorrect, but he would do it for justice. The other thing is that what he did, he was looking for a job, because all of a sudden, from being a second man in the Islamic world, he becomes no one, and in Medina, no one speaks to him because it's dangerous to talk to him. So he's trying to looking for a job. He goes outside of the city, and he finds a Jewish man who has a large land, and he says, your land has a lot of water underneath. I'm going to dig wells for you and bring water to the surface, and you can farm here and develop agriculture, and then later on we can share. So he became a financial partner of a Jewish person. This is also important. Someone who was the second in the Islamic world is so lonely who has to resort to someone from outside of the Islamic territory. He wrote some interpretations of Quran at the time, but also wrote two important books, which they were about justice and good governance, and also about art and calligraphy. He also established a very good relationship with prisoners of war. As Muslims were conquering the lands, they were bringing lots of prisoners of war, especially from Iran, and Ali was going and was saying to them that, but Muhammad abolished slavery, how come you sell these people? And he used to buy some of them and free of them right away, but he married his two sons, Hassan and Hussein, to two Iranian women, the daughters of Yazdgerd, the Shah of Iran, the king of Iran. They were brought as prisoners of war to the city of Medina, sold as slaves, and Ali brought his two sons, Hassan and Hussein, and he looked at the two girls and said, do you want to marry my sons? It was the other way around, so it's not, it was not the man asking the woman, it's the woman, do you want to marry my sons? And they accept. And this is the beginning of a very good relationship between Ali and Iranians, because the story goes that Ali freed the daughter of the Iranian kings, and any Muslim could have raped them at the time, but he married his two important sons to him. So this is his book, Nahjul Balagha, which is means the way of eloquence. It's a treatise on justice and good governance. And the other book is Exalted Aphorism and Perils of Speech. These are treatises on literature, Arabic literature, and calligraphy. So at the time, Muslims were burning books. He was writing books. This is also his art. This is important to say that in Islam, especially in Sunni Islam, an art which would deviate your thought from God is forbidden, but in Shia Islam it's not. And this is a calligraphy written by Ali. It's held in a museum. This is one of the wells he dug in Medina. It still exists, but the Saudi Arabian government has put a wall around it so that Iranians would not be able to visit it. So finally, when Ali became the caliph for less than 5 years, he had these 5 important policies. One is that he stopped the expansion campaigns. Said no more gaining territories. So lots of people, advisors told him, the only thing that keeps the Islamic territory intact is that we are expanding. And if you stop expanding, people are going to be upset, because Muslims, they fought very well, and this made a lot of money for them. So if you stop the wars, people are not going to be happy, and you're going to have problems. But Ali says that Islam spreads by message, not by sword, and the rule of the leader is to create justice, not to expand territory. Another important thing, this is one of the most important things, is that his anti-corruption campaign. So he went one by one to the leaders, the commanders of the Islamic armies, and he confiscated their land and money, and he gave it to issues such as social justice. Now, previously we saw this image of Ali hugging children, because he's the first one in Islam who creates a fund for orphan children, and he also has this special fund which acted like an early stage of insurance. So taking money from many people and giving them away to the poor, or creating funds. So he removed lots of governors, confiscated lands and capital, and lots of people say, well, what are you doing? These people are those people who fought for Islam. They expanded Islam. They fought for Allah. And Ali says that those who fight for Allah, Allah is going to reward them, not me. I'm going to just treat them equally. He also established equal rights between Muslims and non-Muslims. Now, even to this day, even today in Saudi Arabia, if someone is a Christian or a Jew or a non-Muslim, he has to pay a higher tax than Muslims. But at the time of Ali, this rule existed at the time of the first 3 caliphs. He abolished them, and this also put a lot of pressure on him. he canceled the privilege payments. Now, Muhammad, at the time, it's known that Muhammad, his first wife Khadija, from which he had this daughter Fatima, when Khadija died, during the time of Khadija, Muhammad never remarried. He only had one wife. But when Khadija died, he had several other wives. Muhammad's wives, in the period of the first three caliphs, they received privilege payments, 12,000 golden coins each month. So it was a lot, while other Muslims were not receiving that much. Muhammad's companions were receiving 10,000 golden coins per month. So what Ali did is that he canceled all of it. And he said, I'm going to give every Muslim, doesn't matter if he's someone who has newly converted to Islam or old, doesn't matter if this is a Christian or Jew, everyone is going to have a same share. So this again created, because Muhammad's wife's income and Muhammad's companions' income was stopped at this time. Another thing, though, the decentralization, development of land and agriculture, because he also had worked on agriculture, he developed it. But something that finally was fatal for Ali's was his fighting extremism. Those people who are now the basis of Daesh, Ali was saying about it, that without a doubt, these people infer such a wrong meaning of Quran, which are absolutely criminal in Islam and detrimental to humanity. So during this less than 5 years of Ali ruling, he had 3 civil wars. The first war was between Ali and Aisha, Muhammad's wife. Well, Ali canceled her money, and she gathered an army. She was Muhammad's wife. A lot of people still liked her, and especially Talha and Zubair. These are 2 of Muhammad's companions whose money were canceled, were stopped by Ali. They created this huge war. Ali defeated them in this war. The other one, Ali versus Muawiyah. Muawiyah was one of the governors. He was the governor of Damascus at the time. Ali removed him. He did not accept to be removed. There was a war between them, and the war ended some of Ali's army. This is important to say, that Ali's army were not necessarily his followers. They were the army of Islam. And they did not fight well for Ali, we have to say it. Because Muslims were fighting in order to expand land, in order to rape women, in order to loot, in order to burn books. But Ali was stopping everyone. Anyone who, once he heard that a Muslim soldier has looted, has taken some jewelries of a Jewish man, and he punished him in public. So Ali's army at the time were not fighting very well for him because they did not have the incentives. His true followers were very little. So that is why in the battle with Muawiyah, he did not succeed as quite well. The other battle was the Battle of Nahrawan, in which he fought fundamentalist extremists. Finally, Ali was assassinated by one of these fundamentalists, a man called Ibn Muljam. And these are modern posters in Iran showing Ali in the morning prayers in the Mosque of Kufa, because he also moved the capital to Kufa. And as he was praying, Ibn Muljam attacked him from behind and hit him with a sword in the middle of the head, and Ali died 2 days later. So this is the second member of Muhammad's family after Fatima, who died in an assault. Ali is dying in an assassination by an extremist group. Again, there are lots of paintings in Shia Islam depicting Ali, and in a way, this pain and suffering of Jesus and Ali are kind of similar. The feelings show over there. Now, in my presentation, I want to move between history and contemporary so that you wouldn't get tired and you would get the connection much better. In Shia Islam, it's very important to cry. And it has become an important part of the culture. Some people tell me, you Iranians, you so easily cry, and it's true. In Sunni Islam, especially in Wahhabite, but also in general in Sunnis, crying for the dead is forbidden. Because it says that if God has decided someone to be dead, you have to accept it. It's God's will, and if you're a good believer, you shouldn't be upset about it. You should accept it. Even you should be happy about it, because God's will happened. In Shia Islam, it says, no, you can cry for the dead, but especially for the members of Muhammad's family, you should cry and should make other people cry. So cry in public, show your sadness. This is a political tear. This is a political sadness, saying that something gravely wrong happened, and we have to show it, and we have to keep crying. And this is something that Sunnis would tell Shias, that your religion is based on emotions, so it cannot be true. But in Shia vision is that religion and emotion and religion, they're so integrated, they can't just be separated. So at the day of today in Iran, in Shia countries in general, especially in Iran, at the anniversary of Ali's death, there are huge celebrations. This is the city of Mashhad. People gather in public, recite his words, and cry. This is the city of Isfahan, as people gather and pray and cry. Again, not just in mosques, but also in the streets. The streets get filled, and people gather over there crying. It's a family issue. Men and women usually mix in these occasions, and it's as you see here. I mean, in other Muslim countries, the men and women stay completely separated. In Shia countries, especially in Iran, during these celebrations, sometimes they're separated, but most of the times they're mixed. So I want to show these pictures for you just to show you how deep and profound the feelings are. The reason they put the Quran on the head is because Ali was hit on the middle of the head, so in a way to pay respect to him. See, people cry in a very emotional way. Also, those people, this is a policeman, and these are firefighters who are supposed to help the security and safety of the sessions, but they're also crying. Another picture. And it's not just something that is related to religious families and non-religious families. Obviously, this woman, the way she's dressing shows she comes from a traditional family. On the other hand, she has color to her. She comes from a more modern family, but they are both expressing their feelings. At a time being, some people go in families, some people stay alone in nights. Sometimes it gets a little bit romantic, I have to say, in some corners. But it's something that is expressed in the public, and it's not hidden. Children are brought to these events. Even these events usually take several hours and start at night and finish in the morning, in the morning prayers. But people bring their children. So these are stories of Ali and Muhammad's and family. From the very beginning, children hear about it, and it affects them. This is a miniature painting showing the man trying to kill Ali at the prayers, and the angels trying to stop him. Obviously, they couldn't. After Ali, his eldest son, another member of Muhammad's family, Hassan, became the caliph for only 6 months. Now, it is a hadith of Muhammad saying that Hassan and Hussein are Imams, whether they sit or they stand. Now, when Hassan became the caliph, the Islamic army Ali's followers were very, very little, so he had to accept to concede the caliphate to Muawiyah, the former governor of Damascus, but he put a condition that the caliphate is given to Muawiyah only under the condition that Muawiyah would not make it hereditary, would not appoint a caliph after him. And, well, it's believed that Hassan said that I signed the peace treaty to prevent the slaughter and extinction of Shias. The war will be postponed to its right time. Hassan was also poisoned by one of the extremist groups through some of her relatives. This picture here shows Hassan being poisoned and died. So this is the third member of Muhammad's family being poisoned and killed by extremist groups. Now, this used to be Hassan's tomb in the city of Medina about 100 years ago. Once the Saudi Arabia government came to power, they removed the tomb, and this is supposed to be Hassan's grave at the time being. Now, after Hassan, the Imam Hussein, the last member of the Holy Family during the time of Muhammad, he became the leader of Shias. This is a very important point in Islamic history. Now, the hadith says that Muhammad says about Hussein that Hussein is the light of guidance and ship of salvation. After Muawiyah died, in the peace treaty between Muawiyah and Hassan, it was that Muawiyah should not appoint a caliph after him, but Muawiyah appointed his son Yazid, who was at the time someone who Hussein believed was unfit to rule. So Hussein did not accept to give allegiance to Yazid. He was forced to, but he moved away from Medina. He went to Mecca. So they followed him to Mecca and said, you have to give allegiance. in the middle of Hajj, he moved away from Mecca, trying to avoid. So as he moved towards Iraq from Saudi Arabia, at the end, he was caught in a region called Karbala. Now, Hussein says that I'm not rising, I'm not giving allegiance to Yazid, not because I'm an insolent or an arrogant or a warmonger or a tyrant. I've risen against him as I seek to reform the community of my grandfather. So he sees something gravely wrong. He says, this is not the religion my grandfather brought. Muawiyah and Yazid, they were building palaces for themselves. And at their time, they were creating this difference between Arab and non-Arabs. Arabs were receiving much more money and privilege than non-Arab. There was not just a discrimination between Muslims and non-Muslims, but between Arabs and non-Arabs. And the Islamic country was becoming very, very materialistic. Those people, again, amassing large amounts of money and slaves and women and palaces, and Hussein did not accept for it. So he moved with his family and 72 of his followers, and finally he was caught. He was surrounded in an area called Karbala. Now this map is a painting that shows the battle that took place in Karbala on the day of Ashura. This is the peak of Sunni-Shia conflict. Now Hussein's army was just 72, while Yazid's army is reported to be more than 30,000. But what's also important here is that this is the river Euphrates, but Hussein's army was not given access to water for over a week. So as the battle started, Hussein's army were thirsty. And obviously they lost the war and all of them were killed. But this issue of that Hussein is being thirsty is a very important issue in Shia Islam. Now I'm going to show you some paintings that depicts the Battle of Karbala, Hussein and the member of his family fighting the army of Yazid. They were killed one by one. Hussein, this is an important painting, again by Mr. Hassan Ruhul Amin, a modern Iranian painter showing the members of Yazid's army attacking Hussein. And again, for Shias, this is something heartbreaking, that what kind of religion is this? Muslims are killing their prophet's children just a few years after his death. Something is wrong. Something is deeply wrong about this religion. Something is deeply unjust. So as Hussein was killed, his body was slaughtered, was cut into pieces, and his head was removed and was sent to all over Islamic countries. There is a mosque now in Cairo that believe that once Hussein's head was there, it was moved all over the Islamic country. This is the Battle of Karbala, a painting showing Abbas, Hussein's brother, fighting in it. After the war, of course, the heads of Hussein's army was taken all over, and Hussein's family, especially Zainab, which I said was an important figure, was taken as prisoners of war. They were taken from Iraq to Syria on a long walk. And, well, this is again a modern painting showing Zainab resisting, because as Zainab was moved to Yazid's palace, she made a lot of speeches saying that your cause is wrong and that our memory is going to remain alive, and it doesn't matter if you killed us, our story is going to persist. So Zainab plays a very, very important, for Shia Muslims, Zainab is a hero, is a heroess. Someone who lost everyone, someone who lost her grandfather and mother and father and two brothers and 2 sons and lots of family, but still resisted and made the case for Hussein's cause afterwards. So again, this here is another parallel between Shia Islam and Christianity, as the head of John the Baptist was removed, he was decapitated. The head of Hussein was also removed and taken all over. The painting of the Noon of Ashura by the contemporary painter Mustafa Zafari, a very important painting. Again, Ashura is widely celebrated in Shia countries, especially also in Iran, in which people gather in the streets. But again, let's see how this affects everyday life in Iran. Since Hussein was killed thirsty, the issue of access to free water is very important to Iran. Everywhere in Tehran, in Iranian cities, there is free water. And every time on top of it is written, remember that Hussein was killed thirsty. And something I would tell you, if in Iran, if you don't pay your electricity bill or telephone bill or gas bill, after a while, government's going to cut it. But if you don't pay your water bill, there's going to be some letters, please pay, but water is never going to be cut because of the story of Hussein and the fact that he was thirsty. So these are called saddakhane, houses of water, which offer free water to people, and every day they're reminded that Hussein was killed thirsty. They're all over the city, in the courtyards, everywhere. This is Tehran. See, some of them are elaborately decorated, the story of Hussein written all over it. Another image, again, in the corner of streets of Tehran, in the bazaar with a painting. Again, this is a water fountain, and behind it, this poster talks about Hussein, different designs of it. Now, this is interesting. This is a house museum, museum of Mukadam in Tehran. This used to be a private house, but once the owner died, he made it a public museum. This is the bathroom, and at the end, you see an altar. And at the top, it says the name Hussein. So it's not just public, but even sometimes in private houses, in the bathroom or the kitchen, the name Hussein is there to commemorate it. Again, the Saddakhane movement, because Hussein's hand and his brother's hand, Abbas's hand, was killed. These works of art, which are contemporary works of art, show the cut hand and, of course, the modern designs of these Saddakhanes. And this is something that during the celebration of Ashura, the day of Karbala, they bring it in the streets. These are called alam, and they symbolize the cut hand. But say, although the hands were cut, but they still stand up like that. And again, some of my friends tell me why Iranians say something after they drink water. And it's true, because if you walk in the street, sometimes someone comes to you and say, "Do you want some water?" And you say yes, and it says, "But remember that Hussein was killed thirsty." And the person drinks the water and says afterwards, "May I die for your thirsty lips, Hussein." So it's something extremely emotional, extremely rooted deep into the beliefs of Shias and Iranian. Another thing that the effect is having is the tazia. Tazia is a theater, is a passion play, something that this photo is about for 200 years ago. It shows a private setting, a private house. At certain times of the year, people gather and they replay the Battle of Karbala and the way Hussein was surrounded, not given water, decapitated, killed, his sister and family taken prisoner of war, beaten, tortured, and all of that. It's played and reminded. And by the way, Tazia has played an important role in Iranian music, and also it's the root of Iranian cinema. Again, these were very old pictures of Tazia and paintings in Iran. Again, showing Hussein on his battle being beaten. People sit around, watch it in order to visualize it, his decapitation and the torture of his children. I want to say that the thing is so emotional that even the people who in these passion plays, the ones who put on red dress are the persons who killed Hussein. But it's so emotional for them that even when they're killing, they cry. So it's the actor is also crying about it. Again, this is a huge spectacle in the city of Tabriz in north of Iran. People actually replaying the act of burning the tents of Hussein's family. Another important issue is the Arba'in walk. This is something which is close, I think it's in 10 days. Now in Islam, when someone dies, there are commemorations for him after 3 days and 7 days and 40 days. And the one which is after 40 days is the most important one. It's called Arba'in in Arabic. Arba'in means 40th. So because Hussein's family was taken from Karbala from Iraq to Syria on walking, while they were walking, the Arba'in walk, which was banned during the time of Saddam in Iraq, has been revived, and people from all over countries, especially Iran, they walk from Iran towards the city of Karbala in Iraq. Now, it's not just a constant walk, of course. They walk a little bit, then they get into buses, they move forward. But usually they walk the last 50 kilometers. It's the largest human gathering, annual human gathering in the world. There is one human gathering which is larger than this. It's something that belongs to Hindu faith in the city of Benares, but that event takes place every 12 years. This event takes place every year, and each year it's almost 10 to 12 million people just walk towards Karbala, stay there for a few hours, and move away just to commemorate it. It was reported by Iraqi government that in 2014, 17 million people gathered it. Usually every year between 3 to 5 million Iranians walk between these two, between Iran. This is a city of Mehran, a border city in Iran. As you see, people are walking towards Iraq in order to move towards Karbala. Other pictures of it, people just walking. This is Arba'in walk. This is the city of Karbala. This is the tomb of Hussein and the tomb of his brother Abbas, and it's packed. But also, this Arba'in walk has created a bond between Iran and Iraq. Now, these were countries, Iran and Iraq, they fought each other 8 years between 1980 and 1988. They killed 1 million of each other. But at the time being, these walks is something that the Hussein is uniting these two countries together, creating love between them. This is the tomb of Hussein in Karbala, and again, children are always there as part of the voyagers. Now, after Hussein's, according to Shias refer to certain verses of Quran, and I have written the number of the section and the verse, which says that after the number of Imams in Islam are 12. And there are also hadiths of Muhammad saying that after the number of Imams that are the true leader of Muslim society after me are 12 of them, and these are supposed to be the leaders of the Muslim community. So it's Ali and Hassan and Hussein, and then Hussein's son, which is Sajjad, and then Baqir, Sadiq, Kazim. These are generation after generation. These are Shia Imams. So in a period of over 300 years, every one of them were killed by caliphs at the time, either decapitated or poisoned. Every one of them had a story similar to the story of Hassan and Hussein. Especially, most of them were poisoned. So this further divided this gap. So it's not something that just happened once. It happened many, many times over three centuries, over 4 centuries. Well, the last Imam, as Shias believe, is Mahdi. And Shias believe that he's alive and that he's going to come back with Jesus on a day of judgment, which in Christianity it's called Parousia. So it's the same. Shias believe that Jesus and Mahdi are going to come back together in order to create justice in the world. Again, Shias refer to the following verses of Quran, the number of which I have written, that the Quran says that someone will come along with Jesus in order to create justice in the world. And there is a hadith of Muhammad and says that if only one day is left till the end of time, Allah will prolong that day so that Mahdi will come. He is of my house and carries my name, because Mahdi's real name is Muhammad. Mahdi is his title. He will fill the world with justice after it was filled with tyranny and injustice. So this is core to Shia belief, is something that we have to wait until the Mahdi comes, but until then we have to resist. This, until the Mahdi also in Shia, he is known as the owner of the time, Wali Asr. Now, Wali Asr is the name of the longest street in Tehran, the most important street, and I believe everyone who lives in Tehran is going to pass through this street every day, almost every day. So people are reminded of this day, Wali Asr, the owner of the time, the person who's going to come, the person for whom we are waiting, the person who's going to come and take revenge for Hassan and Hussein and all the Imams, the person who's going to come and some of the time he's called the revenger of Fatima, is that those who killed Fatima, Mahdi is going to come and revenge. And it's important because Mahdi is not going to come to create a huge Muslim world. He's not going to convert everyone to Islam. This is against ISIS, because ISIS wants to convert just everyone to Islam. If you look at ISIS maps, they conquered Iraq and Syria, and later they wanted to conquer Iran and India, and they want to conquer Rome, as they call to Europe, they call it Rome, as if the entire Europe is Rome, and then Africa, and this is the Islamic world caliphate. In Shia Islam, it's never going to be Islamic world caliphate. It's just going to be, the world is going to be filled with justice. So again, it's important that he's coming back with Jesus in order. So this name, the owner of the time, the one who's going to come, is a part of everyday life. And every street in Iranian cities, every city in Iran has a most important street called the owner of the time. Now that we have spoken about the early Islamic stage, I want to talk about Iran because in order to have a more focused attention on this. Now, Iran's history in general could be divided into three stages. One of them is the classical antiquity before Islam, which lasted 1,001 years. And that's why we have 1,001 stories in Iranian literature. The other one are the Dark Ages, after Iran was conquered by Muslims. For a period of 850 years, Iran was ruled by Arab dynasties and Sunni caliphate. But later on, the Renaissance of Iran took place in 1501. I'm going to explain all of them one by one. So before Islam, Iran was a country. Most of the people were Zoroastrians, Zartosht. This was the ancient religion of Iranians. It was also a monotheistic religion, only believing in one God. But as the Muslims attacked Iran, as I said, during the time of Caliph Umar, what happened is that people were forced, as I said, there were war crimes taking place, and people were forced to convert to Sunni Islam. And the Persian language was prohibited, and Arabic became the main official language in Iran. And it's important to know that because Arabic became the official language, lots of people who have written treatises on Arabic and Arabic literature are not Arabs, are Iranians. So Arabic literature owes, Arabic is a very beautiful language. I know it because I lived for a while in Beirut, and it's a very, very beautiful language. But if you look at the history of Arabic language, the way it was written and the grammar and all of that was carried out, lots of it was done by non-Arabs because when Arabs moved, they imposed their language everywhere. This is the period in which, but we have to say that during this time, a movement took place in the Iranian literature. There were poets, I'm going to name some of them: Ferdowsi, Khayyam, Nizami, Jami, Bayhaqi, Sa'di, Rumi. I think most of you know the name Rumi. These were the people who insisted on writing in Persian, but the poets. And that's why the language stayed alive. So during this 850 years, Iran was ruled by Sunni dynasties. Shias were systematically killed and tortured and oppressed. Now, this is a very important person in Iran's history. He is called Hassanak the Wazir. He was the minister of one of Iran's Sunni kings, which he found out that he was a Shia. He has in the book of Bayhaqi, he has a very story about it, very, very heartbreaking story. He was killed in public. Now, during this times, Shias were practicing taqiyya. Taqiyya is the act of hiding your religion. So you believe something in the house, but once you go out, you pretend to be something else. And I have to say, in a way, it has remained with Iranians to a large extent, not in religion. Nowadays, when people are Shia, they freely say they're Shia. But this thing of having something in the home, appearing something else outside, this is something that I think got into Iranians' DNA for 850 years. It's difficult to get rid of it. I mean, this is something, a self-critique. As an Iranian, I would say it. Also, another important person who was killed is a person called Hallaj. They found that he was Shia, they crucified him, and even today in Tehran, I think it's today, they have this opera, Hallaj opera in Tehran. So the memory is kept alive every year. Now, during this 850 years, well, different dynasties came and went. These are the Umayyad dynasties, the Abbasid dynasties, but these are more local Iranian dynasties. Some of them, they're very big. Some of the time, they were very small because Mughals attacked Iran. But when we, around 1500 AD, we see that Iran is not a country anymore. It's disintegrated. What we believe, what we see as Iran, as a unified country, as one of the oldest civilizations in the world, as the country of Cyrus the Great and the Persian Empire, it's not just there. It's bits and pieces of local dynasties ruling. So what happened in this, I want to show you in this map that when these dynasties conquer Iran, you see in the north, most of the times they couldn't conquer it, the north of Iran. Most of the times it was very difficult to conquer the north of Iran because of its very difficult geographic position. because it's separated from the rest of the country by high mountains, Alborz mountain chain, which is very cold and difficult to pass, and behind it there are lush green forests. This is the landscape. This is the Alborz mountain chain, and behind the Caspian Sea, and these mountains are this lush jungles in which it's very easy to hide. So what we have at this time is the escape of Imamzadas. Now I told you that there were 12 Imams of Shiites in 300 years. Well, all of them, they had lots of children and relatives and followers. But since Shias were systematically oppressed, they had no choice but to escape to safe areas. And there was the closest safe area for those people were the north of Iran, because it was easy to hide. It was very difficult for the Muslim army to pass through these mountains. And even if they passed, it's very easy to get lost somewhere in the jungle or in the lush areas. So we have 11,000 Imamzadas. Imamzade means the descendants of Imams. So 11,000 of them are buried in Iran right now, and their tomb is marked. Half of them are in north of Iran. But what Imamzadas did is that they spread this Shia Islam in a very hidden way, but in a very consistent and continuous way over 8 centuries in Iran. So this is, for example, in north of Iran. Again, this is an Imamzada whose tomb. Some of the times, their architecture is insignificant, but nevertheless, they are the center of urban development everywhere. Again, this is the north and an Imamzada. Sometimes, as insignificant as they might seem, they played a very important role in Iran's history. Again, Imamzadas. Well, some of them have more elaborate architecture. I'm going to show you some examples. But I have to say that Imamzadas, as I said, are the center of urban development. This is north of Tehran. As you see, the north of Tehran, this is Imamzada Saleh, and this is how first they built Imamzada, and around it was the Bazaar, and then the residential zones. So every Iranian city has many Imamzadas around it. This is north of Tehran, the way Imamzada Saleh, and everything is built around it. Sometimes you forget that this was the origin of the city. Sometimes because they're small and hidden. But nevertheless, if you study urbanism in Iran, you see almost every Iranian city or district has an Imamzada. Again, this is the densest area in Tehran, in entire Iran. This is the Bazaar of Tehran. And it should not be surprising that the densest area in Iran has the densest zone in Imamzadas. There are all these yellow circles are tombs hidden, and around it urban development took place in Iran. These are Imamzadas in the bazaars of Tehran. See, this is an Imamzada next to a shop. This is how integrated it is. So as people go shop, they pass in front of Imamzada. And as they pass, they see something about Ali and something about Hussein. So they remind. If they get tired, there isn't like a lot of seats. They go into an Imamzada to rest. And there they can wash and they can have free water, and it's air conditioned. And so it's part of their everyday life. This is again an Imamzada in the city of Shiraz. So Imamzada acts as a public space. Most of public spaces in Iran are close or highly integrated into an Imamzada. This is in the city of Kashan, near Kashan, Imamzada Hilal. This is the Mashhad, north of Iran. This is the 8th Shiite Imam. Imam Reza is buried here. You see, you can't say where is the mosque and where is the city, where the mosque ends and where the city starts. There is no demarcation. All these courtyards, and by the way, this is at every time of the year, there are 2.5 million people in this mosque. People just come and go for pilgrimage. And you see that the streets end into a courtyard. So it's part of everyday life. It's not that if you don't, let's say you are not a religious person and you don't want to believe and you don't want to go into a mosque at all. It's just the city is built in such a way that you pass through it. And you get reminded about it. That's how it's integrated. The interior design of these Imamzadas are so elaborate. They're done in a very elaborate way. So we reach the time of King Ismail I, the Shah, the founder of the Safavid dynasty, the Shah of Iran, between 1501 and 524. Now, Ismail, he came from a Sunni family, actually from a Sufi Sunni family. His mother, Martha, was a Christian from Georgia. She was Georgian. So at an early age, from what he has said, he has written in his books, that he sees Ali in his dreams, and once he wakes up, he decides to convert to Shia Islam. And he says that from today, I'm going to declare Shia Islam as the official state religion. Now, people around him, though, this is so dangerous, you're going to do this, you're going to create a Shia pocket, a Shia entity, a little purple color in the middle of all of this Sunni areas. Don't do this. And he says that in my dreams, they have told me that the people of the house and the Imams are going to help me. So he declared Shia as the official state religion and reinstated Persian as the official state language. Now, to this date, Iran's constitution has changed so much over the time, but there are two clauses in Iran's constitution. One says that Shia Islam is the official state religion and Persian is the official state language, and these are the ones which haven't changed in the past 500 years. So his advisor were right. Because he declared Shia Islam, all of a sudden this became in a very miraculous way, because all these dynasties were so scattered in a very short period of time, almost 1 year. All of them were united. He didn't have to fight too many wars. He had only 2 or 3 small wars, and later on he could unite the entire Iran together, making it again an integrated country. This is the identity of Iran. But as we see in this map, Iran, which by this time has become an officially Shiite country, is surrounded by 2 very powerful Sunni empires. One is the Mughal Empire on the east, the Mughals, which by now have converted to Islam, and on the west, a very, very powerful Ottoman Empire. Sultan Salim, the Caliph, the Ottoman Sultan, could not tolerate a Shia empire next to him, so decided to attack Iran. He attacked Iran, so he moved from Istanbul, from Istanbul, which is here, moved all the way to the city of Chaldran near Tabriz, where this is the Chaldran, this is a war memorial. So there was this war between Iranian and the Ottoman Empire. So Ismail had to divide his army. His army was about 40,000 people at the time. He sent half of them to this border and half of them to this border. So 20,000 people versus 100,000 Ottoman army. And this was the war in which Ottomans, for the first time, used war weapon, cannons and guns. Iranians by that time did not have it. They just had swords and arrows. So obviously the result is obvious, a crushing defeat for the Iranian army, and Ismail was defeated, and his army was completely collapsed. But this war, for Iranians, they were not so upset about this war, because this war was a little bit like the battle in Karbala. Again, like in Karbala, Yazid's army was huge, and Hussein's army was small. Again, here, Ottoman's army is huge, and Iran's army is small. Something interesting that happened in this war is that although Salim defeated the Iranian army, he could have basically conquered almost entire Iran without any resistance, because the other half of the army was here. And he could have done it, but he thought that this is a trap, and there might be armies forward, so he kept the city of Tabriz for a few weeks, then he moved back to Istanbul. So basically Iran did not lose, it lost the war, but it did not lose any land or any territory. On the contrary, it made the Shia identity in Iran much stronger. Now that they say, just like the Battle of Karbala, where they killed Hussein, and they completely eradicated his family, but the story remains. Now they defeated Iran, but we have our land and we have our faith, so it made it stronger. It's interesting because after this defeat, I mean, usually countries or civilizations and communities, they build trophies and monuments after victory. Iranians build it after defeat. After this defeat, because this defeat is like Hussein's defeat, there are exquisite, huge, monumental architecture taking place, being built all over Iran. This is the city of Isfahan. Huge plazas and mosques. with exquisite details, architectural details, always praising Muhammad and his family, Ali and his family, Hussein and all the Imams all around it, saying that we build this architecture, and this is all after a defeat, not after a victory. The light, as Muhammad says, Hussein is the light of salvation, and Ali, your followers are going to go to heaven on beds of light. So you see light coming in from all over this place. Again, lots of colors in Iranian architecture, all built after a defeat. Now, there's not much time. I want to move forward. So I'm going to skip almost 500 years and move towards this time, the 20th century. The war between Iran and Iraq is another war which resembles the Battle of Karbala for Iranians, in the mind of Iranians. Iranians don't call it a war because they would say we never start a war, so you shouldn't call it a war. It's 8 years of holy defense. So after the Islamic Revolution, Saddam Hussein attacked Iran. I don't want to get into details why, but at that time, Saddam Hussein was widely supported by the United States, by the Soviet Union, and the cost of war was paid by Saudi Arabia, Iran's regional rival and the main Sunni sponsor in the region. So Iraq under Saddam, did not have any problem in the war. They had all the money and the weapon they could have had. On the other hand, Iran was under not just economic sanctions, but also under arms sanctions. So no one could sell arms to Iran. And they basically had to go ahead with what they had during the time of Shah or purchase it in the black market. Also, Saddam Hussein attacked Iranian cities, but also Kurdish cities. Those areas of Iraq which supported Iran during the war in the region of Kurdistan, Saddam attacked it with chemical bombs. This was the first use of chemical bomb after World War II, and more than 10,000 Kurds were slaughtered in one day in the city of Sardasht and Halabja. And the chemical bomb was delivered to Saddam Hussein after Donald Rumsfeld visited Baghdad. So again, once the war was over, Iran lost many soldiers, many lives, and they were many, Iranians were few, but in the same time, they didn't really lose it. The people remained and the faith remained. So this plays again into their psyche, that if something is unjust, you have to resist it, and finally you're going to prevail. So it's true that Saddam is so powerful, and America and Europe and Soviet Union is going to help it, but this is an unjust war imposed on Iranians, and we're not going to submit, we're going to resist. Even if we get defeated, at the long run, we're going to win. This is the mentality. I'm going to go a little bit forward with the war with ISIS, which took place, ISIS in 2014, took large amount of land in Iraq and Syria. Again, ISIS was seen as an extremist Sunni group. Now, this was an extreme version of Sunni Islam. Obviously, not all of them are like this, but ISIS is a terrorist group, and they committed lots of crimes. So Iranian army, through its proxies in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, they fought ISIS. Now this man, his name is Mohsen Hojaji, he became a symbol of war against ISIS. He's an Iranian soldier fighting in Syria. This is an ISIS soldier. They took him as, he became ill in the war, and he was taken as prisoner of war. But Iranians, they say, I don't know if you agree or not, well, I'm having a little bit of difficulty, but they say that although he's the captive, but he's so calm. And although he's the one who has captured him, but he's the one who's afraid. That's how Iranians depict it. And later on, he was decapitated, and it was shown live on TV. This is a modern painting showing Hussein, the man with no head, opening his arms to receive Mohsen Hojaji. Again, this is because they say this is an unjust war. This ISIS, for Iranians, let's say in Spain, if you say ISIS, you say, okay, these are terrorist groups. Where did they come from? They rape women. They kill all people. They burn everything. They burn architectural heritage, right? You've seen it. But for Iranians or Shia community, this is an old story. This is not new. This is something that happened during the time of Ali. At those times, these people did the same thing at that time. They raped women. They raped Iranian women. They raped Mesopotamian women. They raped Egyptian women. They burnt books at that. It's not new. It's centuries-old stories, and that's why, although they were very powerful, but we have to resist and we have to fight, and even if we lose, the cause is going to remain. So let's go back to this original map, and what's this little stain of purple doing in the middle of all of this green? And we go to the story of the first story of Prophet Muhammad gathering his family under a cloak, under a blanket, and saying that the verse of purification. So that's why the cause of Iran is this. Right now, Iran is under a war. It's not. There isn't a military war. Well, a little bit of military war in the Persian Gulf, but not a military war. But Iran is under economic sanctions. We can't trade with the world. We can't sell our oil. All Iranian bank accounts everywhere in the world is closed. It's very, very difficult now to do trade with the world. It's very, and some people would say, well, why don't you just talk with Donald Trump? Talk to him. He wants a photo up, give it to him. Well, look what he did with Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un gave him a photo, and well, he didn't put that much pressure on North Korea anymore. Just give the man the photo he wants. Just talk to him. But for Iran's case, it just can't happen because it's unjust. And if something is unjust, you're not going to submit. And even if you go under huge pressure, even if you lose, at the end, you're not going to lose it. So this story of Ali and the Shia identity of Iran, its effect on everyday life in the bazaar and the streets and the cities and the water and all of that, and its regional influence at the time, is the story of Shia Islam, which I hope I was able to convey to you. Thank you. Yes, of course. This is, Iranian government is constitutionally an Islamic government, and it uses the religion to further its cause. But what I wanted to say today, I think it has been said a lot, that the Iranian government uses religion in order to further its cause, and in various ways. But what I wanted to say today, that this is not about politics anymore. This is not about government anymore. This is about people, and this is about everyday life. So lots of people in Iran might criticize the government for many, many issues, but when it comes to this story of resisting, they wouldn't blame the government. They would blame the government that we wish the government was less corrupt. We wish they would have been more just. All of it. But if you tell them that to succumb to the United States and to Saudi Arabia, this just destroys their identity. So the story I told you today is not about government, it's not about politics, it's not about you being a religious person or non-religious person. I have lots of friends who are non-religious. They have never prayed in their life. They drink alcohol, which is forbidden. But for them, they still cry for Ali. They cry so much for Ali. They beat their chest for Hussein. Maybe I should show that video, right? Is that interesting? Maybe I should show you that video about Ashura. No, it doesn't show? Here? Maybe I should start from here. Okay. This is the commemoration of Ashura in Iran. I know many people. This happens in my neighborhood. And lots of my friends are there, and I know them. They're not religious. They haven't prayed. They drink alcohol. They have sex outside of marriage. I know them. But when it comes to Hussein and Ali, they still cry. This chest beating is a sign of sadness.
اینی که میگیم لبیک یا حسین فقط معناش شهادت نیست محیای محیا زندگی امام حسین زندگی با خانواده.
So he's talking about the importance of family. If you want to live, to carry on with Hussein, you have to take care of your family and you have to resist with your family. So if there is economic sanctions, tell your family, let's resist. Learn from Hussein. This is what he's saying.
لبیک یا حسین
what happened? Sorry. I want to show you something else. This is a symphony opera in Tehran. The leader of the Tehran's symphony opera symphony is a Christian. His name is Louis Chaknavarian. He comes from he's Armenian, but his parents came to Iran a long time ago. He both holds Iranian nationality and Armenian nationality. He has made an opera, a classical music piece about Hussein. And he's not even Muslim. Look. Just 2 minutes, maybe. Louis Chaknavarian. So these are the poems people read for Hussein. Oh, morning, don't come because Hussein is going to die. But in a classical way. Yes.
In relation to the video we saw before,
Yes.
I've got a question talking about the fact that I remember, I think you talked about the fact that Shias and Sunnis, the difference between when the prayer comes, they mix Shias, if I'm not wrong. There's women and men that are mixed
Yes.
in there. Comparatively with Sunnis, they're not. They're
Yes.
just like separate.
Yes.
So the thing is, that video we saw,
It's separated.
they are separated, so I'm
Yes, this is the thing. When they're gathering just to talk and pray, they're mixed. But when it's about chest beating, because then there's going to be a lot of contact, before that they would say, let's separate so that men and women could easily do the chest beating, because otherwise men are going to hit the woman. So it's,
okay, so
yes, it's different stages. At the time of listening and crying, families are together. But at the time of chest beating, before that they separate in the street, almost in a conscious way. People do it by themselves after a while.
And another question,
Yes.
so what about the water? I don't know if the meaning of the water
Yes.
comes to at least, well, not at least, but one of
Hussein's.
the one.
Hussein's, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a meaning in there.
Yes, it's there. Just
So the water.
exactly
in the middle,
everywhere.
separate.
Everywhere in Iran, there's just all of this water. And if you see in the video, maybe I. Oh. I don't know where it was. I want to show you. You see, they put red color in the water underneath it just to make it look like blood. So it's the mixture of water. Is that Hussein did not drink water, but his blood was poured into the water. Yes, it's just. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Rosa, you tell me which one is here. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Zaafari. Thank you much for the presentation.
Thank you.
I was very interested in the Arba'in pilgrimage to Karbala because I had never heard about it. And I wanted to know if nowadays it carries a symbol of reconciliation with Iraq.
Of course, it does. It does. There are stories. During Iran and Iraq war, so there was this war on the border. And now if you go in Tehran, there is this huge highway called Hemmat Highway. It's named after Iran's commander-in-chief of the army, Ibrahim Hemmat. So they're saying that one day Hemmat was on the border and they were fighting, and one of his friends say, well, I hope I could just move a few meters forward. And he said, don't worry, you're just going to walk to Karbala one day. So this story is being told over and over. And yes, it creates, because if 5 million Iranians walk to Iraq one day, every year, they're going to make friends over there. And they're going to buy things and sell things. And this reconciles. This has helped because since the conquest of Iran by Muslims, there was always this idea that Arabs have conquered us, and Arabs have done this, and Arabs have done that. This, in a hidden way, there is this Persian-Arab conflict. But this Arba'in walk has reconciled. Because now every Iranian, not every, but many Iranians have Arab friends. Yes, it does. Yes.
Yes, going back to the first map
Yes.
between the Sunnis and the Shias, I want to know your opinion about if you think there are other dichotomies in the region, not just the religious Sunni and Shia, but the poor and the wealth, or the secular and the religious countries, or the pro-US and the pro-Chinese and the pro-Soviets,
Yeah.
that in the future will have more relevance in the regional context to explain the conflicts that you mentioned about Yemen or Saudi Arabia and Iran. If the Sunni-Shia dichotomy will lose relevance and other facts about the society, wealth or allegiance to the US or China or Russia will have more weight.
I think, yes, it does. I mean, the energy market, the access to water, all of those are factors that are going to play. Now, let's say, it's not just about Sunni Shia. I don't want to say that this is a Sunni Shia conflict. I wanted to say that how this area became so different and why they are behaving so differently under pressure. So yeah, Azerbaijan is 80% Shias, but and people in Azerbaijan commemorate Ashura and Ali and Hussein just like Iran. But the government of Azerbaijan is a close ally of the United States and the West, and it does not have a good relation. It does have, but not a very, very good relationship. Iran has a better relationship with Armenia, which is a Christian country, but not with Azerbaijan, which is a Shia Muslim country. So it's not a conflict between Shia and Sunni. There are Sunnis in Iran. I told in the class yesterday the captain of Iran's football team is a Sunni. Before him, he was a Christian. It was Andranik Iskandarian is a Christian. Now Voria Ghafuri is a Sunni. So it's not a conflict. They live freely. They're part of the society. It's just that why Iran and its proxies in the region behave so differently under pressure. Because they see it as unjust, and they see that if they succumb to injustice, they're failing Muhammad and Ali and all of this feeling that comes with it. Yes, of course, there are lots of other dichotomies and factors coming to the region, and I don't believe there is a Sunni-Shia conflict in the region. I don't think it's a conflict. I think it's a difference of how Shia behave or react towards pressure. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yes.
I have one question. We look to Iran nowadays is ruled based on the doctrine of the Velayat Faqih.
Yes.
The idea that the religion has to rule the country. But if we go like to one of the most important figures of the Shia ideology nowadays, the Ayatollah Najat is
Sistani, no?
Sistani, he's against it.
Yes,
I
that's
mean,
true.
the relation between the Shias in Iraq and the Islamic Republic of Iran is conditioned by this position of Sistani. Also, we go also to other Shia leaders, for instance, in Lebanon. For instance, Muqadam in Lebanon, that's 3 years ago. He was also against it. The doctrine of the Velayat Faqih, on what is it standing?
You see, it's a different interpretation. Many Shias, you mentioned Grand Ayatollah Sistani in Najaf. He is a spiritual leader, religious spiritual leader of many Shias in the world, in Iraq and Iran and Najaf. He believes that at the time when Mahdi has not come, you are not allowed to establish an Islamic government or rule under the name of Islam, because establishing an Islamic government is only possible if there is an imam, an infallible imam. Otherwise, if you establish an Islamic government without an imam being an infallible imam, being its leader, you're gonna do something wrong, and that wrong, the thing is wrong, is gonna go towards the religion. It's his belief. But Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran did not believe so. He said that at the time of Mahdi, we have to take on the government, and we have to prepare for his coming. You cannot just sit and wait until he comes. So Velayat al-Faqih, or the Islamic government in Iran, sees itself as someone who is preparing for the coming of Mahdi. This is the slogan. I don't think even if they believe so, they're doing anything towards that, because there are lots of corruption and there are lots of wrongdoings. They're doing some good things, I believe, in some areas, but there are also lots of wrongdoings. But this is the difference. Grand Ayatollah Sistani believes that we have to wait until Mahdi comes, and Ayatollah Khomeini says that we have to take the governments and prepare for him until he comes. But nevertheless, when it comes to this story of resistance, they're both on the same page, because they would say they both believe in the cause of Muhammad's family, and that it's important that something unjust was done to them. And although we have to work towards reconciliation and a very peaceful coexistence between Sunni and Shia, but you should not lose the story. You should not say that, you should not censor the story so that Sunnis would not be upset about it. You say your story, but you have to still live in peace with your neighbors. I think I have to. Yes?
If I understand you correctly, you said that Shias are waiting for Mahdi to come back, and with him, Jesus will come back too.
They come together.
I wanted to know why Jesus is not another prophet. Thank you.
It's a story in Quran that says, that says Jesus is in waiting, and that the person who is going to fill the world with justice is going to come with him. These are the story. I don't know why not other prophets, but in Islam, they believe that Jesus has not died, that he's still alive but waiting to come. Yes?
I have a question regarding the Shias, because within the Shias they have many imamotes and many imams. And every imam has like one of the interpretation of the Quran, and I would like to know, for example, if there are conflicts between the imam for the Shia, and how is it divided?
Which imam do you mean?
For example, the Aga Khan to any other.
Yes.
And also, what happens within the countries where they have a Shia majority with a Sunni leader?
But the first question is true. Not all, there are variations in Shiism as well. There are Zaydis who believe in 4 imams. There are Ismailis, the Aga Khan, who believes in 7 imams. There are some, they differ in details, but in principle, it's the same. But the Ismailis, whose leader are Aga Khan, they were very powerful at a certain time in history. They established a very, very strong government in Egypt, the Fatimid government. And they ruled for many centuries, and they created actually a very great civilization in Egypt. But they declined, and the Ayyubids were able to defeat them. Nowadays, I think 90% of Shias are 12ers, believing in 12 imams. So, some details in the way of praying, in some detailed way of beliefs, they differ, but in principle of what I said today, it doesn't differ much. And the second question was about?
The second question was the status of the Shias within the countries where the leader is Sunni.
Yes, one example was Saddam Hussein, that now is not there anymore. Another example would be Bahrain, which is 90% Shia. This is a very small country with almost 500,000 population. It's 90% Shia, but the leader is a Sunni and a great ally of the Saudi Arabia. All the jobs in that area go to Sunni, to that 10% of majority, all the important jobs. Yeah, they live under harsh conditions. It's true. It's also true the other way around in some cases. But I believe that at the time being, Bahrain is the only country in which it has a Shia majority with a Sunni government. Yes?
I have another question.
Let's the last one, because then at 6 we need to change, and it's almost 6.
Someone from here had raised the hand, I think. No? A lady from here I had seen. Rosa, yes, of course. Sure. No. Rosa, I don't know.
Just one.
Okay. We can speak later if you like. Yes, please. Yes? Yes.
Well, what we've been seeing these days is that in this region they have two large Turkish groups, the Saudis and the Iran, and that has been generating proxy wars around this region. And how is this actually changing the way that this region behaves, and what this has been actually facing religion, like how has been shaping religion and how people see each other around this area?
How people conceive of each other around this area. No, see, for Iran, well, Iran does not have many allies in the world. Okay, its allies are of its own making. So once United States attacked Iraq and removed Saddam Hussein, there was this opportunity. Iranians got it. They established very good relationship with the Iraqi government, with the Kurdistan regional government in the north. They created a proxy force over there. The same goes with Syria. The same goes with Shias in Lebanon. The same goes with Houthis with Yemen. So these are Iran's allies in the region, and it has helped Iranians to better understand their neighbors, because, as I would say, Iran was always Iran has 15 neighbors through land and sea, but not much relationship with all of them, with any of them. recently, through this proxies and alliance, people are getting to know each other much better. But as for Saudi Arabia, I think it's feeling a threat. So Yemen was always a backyard for Saudi Arabia. Now they thought they would be able to defeat Yemen in just 2 weeks. Now the war is into 5th year. They're badly stuck. So for them, I think it would be fair for them to be very furious about it. Thank you.
So we just
Thanks a lot.